Familiar tasks like driving to the supermarket. That's another very huge warning sign, is getting lost going to familiar places. That again is not normal as we age. Confusion with time or place. So of course, as seniors get older, they're retired, they may wake up and forget what day of the week it is, you know, but they can remember or figure it out later. But signs of dementia are confusing the seasons, not knowing what season you're in. Again, these are not normal parts of aging, is thinking you're living in another decade. So really getting confused about the year you're in. One example I give is Glenn Campbell. Many may know was the singer and songwriter in the 70s, rock and country music, and he died recently of Alzheimer's disease. And there's a great documentary about his journey and his diagnosis. But some simple questions, such as when he went to a neurologist, he asked him, you know, who's the president of the United States? So again, if you're 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, you'll remember, you'll know, you can say who's the president of the United States, and he couldn't. So although he was very high functioning, as Nathan said, in the early stages, you would not know that somebody has Alzheimer's disease by looking at them or with short interactions. They seem perfectly fine. But there are these little warning signs that pop up that dementia has been creeping in. Number 5, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. Now, this is interesting because we often think of Alzheimer's disease or dementia as simply a disease about memory loss. But because it affects all areas of the brain, it affects many other areas in functioning. So what people see, confusion about differentiating, say, my reflection in a window or in a mirror from reality, or what's outside the window. There may be a lot of difficulties in distinguishing things visually. So as we get older, it's normal to need reading glasses, having a harder time driving at night, again, very normal. But signs of dementia is not being able to distinguish, say, mashed potatoes on a white plate, thinking that you're finished eating and not being able to see that. So again, without high contrast, visual abilities are compromised. Can't judge the distance in between cars while driving. And this leads to another telltale sign, is starting to have more fender benders or little accidents as they get older. So definitely want to pay attention when those things creep up. New problems with words and speaking and writing. And so with normal aging, tip of the tongue, occasionally forgetting the right word, you know, that's normal. But signs of dementia are having difficulty following a conversation, calling things by the wrong name. So you can't remember the word for watch, so you call it a hand clock. So strange things like that. Another movie you could see to see this visually is Still Alice, starring Julianne Moore, where she's a professor and she gets early onset of Alzheimer's disease. And she's a professor and she's trying to give a presentation or a speech, and she's forgetting her train of thought. So again, as she gets older, 60, 70, 80, 90, she would still be able to give a presentation, but having that difficulty are some warning signs that the thinking process is compromised. Misplacing things and losing ability to retrace steps. So we get asked all the time, you know, I lose my keys all the time. Does that mean I have Alzheimer's disease? And no, of course not. We all misplace our keys, our glasses, our cell phone, things like that. But we're usually able to find them and retrace our steps. But if you find that, you know, the person in your family is putting the milk in the cupboard instead of the refrigerator, putting things in odd places, finding things like the toothbrush in the refrigerator, or, you know, wet rags in the cupboard, you know, things like that, you really want to pay attention to something that's odd like that. And the other thing that comes up often is accusing others of stealing. You know, they can't find their purse or their wallet, and, you know, you must have stolen my wallet, or someone else had come in and stolen the wallet or stolen my money. So those kinds of accusations or denial of maybe placing them in the wrong place, again, are warning signs. So decreased or poor judgment is also another thing that comes up with someone who is experiencing dementia. So normally making a bad decision occasionally is part of normal aging. Taking the 101 during rush hour traffic, not recognizing that that may not be the best time. Okay, we can understand that that happens. But signs of dementia, and this gets into safety issues. Someone who is starting to experience dementia is vulnerable to fraud. So, and unfortunately, there are people who prey on seniors specifically, knowing that they may be more vulnerable. So they may be vulnerable to telemarketers, calling, asking for their address, their name, who they're living with, their social security number, signing up to buy things that they don't need. One family told me that they had to make sure the advertisements on TV weren't on. So because the father would write down the numbers and call and order stuff that he saw on TV. So they had to take away the credit card accessibility. Putting a metal cookie sheet in the microwave, things that we know better. Stealing from a store, so going into Target and putting things in their pocket or taking a little mug, you know, so they're really starting to lose a sense of what's appropriate. So those again can be early warning signs that something's not going on right. So withdrawal from work or social activities. So normal aging, feeling weary about work, family, and social obligations. There may be some, you know, normal activities there. But signs of dementia is stop attending church because you're unable to remember people's names or follow the sermon. Stop attending weekly lunch dates with friends. So really withdrawing because of that difficulty in carrying on conversations, because of some of the short-term memory loss. And difficulty and confusion, increased confusion of the brain. So again, you want to be pay attention to these things and see what might be happening. So changes in mood and personality. So normal aging have a specific way to do laundry and get irritated when it's not done correctly. We all know that. We can have family members that are very stubborn about things. But if our family member is becoming more suspicious, anxious, or depressed or fearful, introverts become very extroverted. Really, these kinds of changes that seem odd, you want to go with your gut. If it seems odd, then there might be something to get checked. There might be something more to it than just moodiness. There may be something, again, going on with their functioning that has caused them to be more agitated or fearful. So those are kind of a whole series of different ways that you can distinguish between normal aging and signs of dementia. Because again, that's a very common question we get. You know, we slow down as we get older, so it's hard to distinguish, especially in the early stage when someone is very high functioning, what is just normal aging and what are signs that there may be signs of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And so hopefully that gave you kind of a list to understand how there's some distinguishing differences in the warning signs. In any case, we do recommend getting a memory test annually as part of your annual exam. I think over the age of 65 it is included, but anyone at any time could get a memory test, get an exam. If it's not by your primary care physician, you can ask a referral to a neurologist or gerontologist to help administer that exam and try to get a baseline and see where everybody's at. And then if you have it annually, it will help recognize if some of these signs come up. And you want to get the diagnosis early. You don't want to wait because, of course, we mentioned there are some safety issues. There's wandering, there's accidents in the home, leaving the stove on, judgments, you know, vulnerability to fraud. So you want to check on the finances and things like that and make sure everything's secure. If someone is starting to experience signs of dementia or Alzheimer's disease, there are some very serious safety issues that can come up. So we want to address that. Okay, let's go to our next part, and that is the broken sentences and the 5 key messages. So part of the Dementia Friends program that was started in the United Kingdom is they have these 5 key messages that they want to have everybody learn and understand very well. So let's see, the way they set it up is to have parts, and 1 through 5 is the first part, and A through E is the second part, and they mixed it up, so you have to try to match them. So we kind of do this pencil and paper when we hand it out in person. Of course, virtually it's a little bit difficult to do that, but I'll just read them out right now so we can see you know, what the possible matches might be. So number 1, dementia is not. 2, dementia is caused by. Dementia is not just. It is possible to have a, and there's more to the person than. And on the right-hand side, A is diseases of the brain. The most common is Alzheimer's. A normal part of aging. Not everyone who grows old will develop dementia. A good quality of life with dementia. D, the dementia. People with dementia are a valuable part of the community. And E, about having memory problems. It can affect thinking, communication, and doing everyday tasks. So I think I will just go ahead and start matching them for you, and we'll discuss what the intentions are behind each message. So first, dementia is not a normal part of aging. And we kind of went over that with the 10 differences between normal aging and signs of dementia. So it is not a normal part of aging. And this is really a simple message, but yet it's something we still need to teach. I have heard many times from community members that have come to me and said, you know there's something wrong with my mom, but when I went to the primary care physician, he said, oh, that's just normal. This happens when they're aging. So it's not just community members, it's also the healthcare professions that think that losing memory loss, short-term memory loss, to the degree of even the warning signs is a normal part of aging, and it's not. So there's a big difference between normal aging and starting to see warning signs of dementia. There's definitely a difference there, and that's one message we want to promote and make sure it's clear. So dementia is caused by disease of the brain. The most common is Alzheimer's disease. So again, these are the brain diseases that, as Nathan mentioned, they are progressive. Right now, fortunately, there is not a cure for Alzheimer's disease or the other brain diseases. And so, but we do know a lot more now than we did 20, 30 years ago about how to support somebody with Alzheimer's. And the goal, of course, with all of this education is for our communities to be more healthy and to understand it better, and so that we can live with it better. And we want to reduce the stress and increase the well-being of all of our community members. So it is a disease of the brain. And dementia is not just about having memory loss problems. It can affect thinking, communication, and doing everyday tasks. So again, someone asked me once, well, how do you die of Alzheimer's disease if it's just a memory loss? And it's not just memory loss. Again, the brain is the executive function of our body. And as it slowly loses its abilities, it's going to affect every part of our functioning, every action that we do. And eventually it affects our ability to eat and swallow and breathe. So it affects all parts of our brain. Number 4, it is possible to have a good quality of life with dementia. And this is one that really brings up a lot of discussion because some people have a problem thinking about, well, how can you have a good quality of life with dementia? You're losing your abilities, you can't drive, you're not independent, you're not, but we definitely, so this is a good one for discussion about how do you see, how do you define a good quality of life? And with dementia, how is that defined, a good quality of life? And that's where we discuss really talking about having comfort, having understanding, enjoying the person. It is a progressive disease, so the strengths that you have throughout the disease, enjoying that and being supportive. And many caregivers that we work with are very loving and supportive of their family member. And we are sad about the losses, but many are really enjoying the person even with dementia. So especially in the early stages, we may be hesitant to share that there's a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. But I think a great example was Glenn Campbell, who was very open about it. Said, I have Alzheimer's disease, I'm living with it and carrying on as best as we can and enjoying life as best as we can. So it is possible to have a good quality of life. even with dementia or diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. So the fifth message is there's more to the person than the dementia. People with dementia are a valuable part of the community, and that's one of the last and probably the most valuable message in this program, is that often we think, oh, with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, that's it. There's nothing more we can do with that person. There's nothing more that person can do in the community, and that's not true. We can still enjoy the person. The person can still be active, be a part of the community, engage in things. Our community can be more supportive. Nathan mentioned many ways where a city can make adjustments to be supportive of community members with dementia. So really want to say it's more than the diagnosis, that there's still a full person there with feelings, emotions, and wants and needs and desires to be productive and feel having a purpose. So we want to appreciate that. Okay, next they have this story that they tell, and I'm going to try to show the video. I don't know if my internet is that stable. I might just share the story that I know. So as you can see, there is a bookcase here, and you can say the analogy is we all start with a bookcase full of books, and the top shelf we have all these intellectual books. The middle shelves we have like practical things like cooking, and the bottom shelves we have stories and long-term memories that we've had our whole life. And what they say is, having Alzheimer's or dementia is kind of like a shaking. You shake the bookshelf and some of the top books fall off. So we lose some of our intellectual capacities, some of our learning, some of our skills. As we get to the middle stages, you have more shaking of it, more of those books fall off. But one of the key messages is the bottom shelf and the bookshelf usually stays intact. And that is our memories, our emotions, our feelings, and that will stay there and linger much longer, those feelings. So one way to describe this is, say a family, I have one family that the mother is a stepmother and she's caring for the father, and he has grown adult children. And she was sharing that, they feel hesitant to visit, or when they visit, they say, well, Dad doesn't even remember that I was there. And what she shares with them is that, well, he may not remember that you were here yesterday, but that feeling is there. I can tell the rest of the day, the feeling that you've left him after visiting is there. And that's what we want to share. That's what we want. That's one of the biggest messages too, is that even though somebody may not have the technical memory of things that occur, a lot of their emotional feelings are still internalized and memorized more subconsciously. And so the person is still there, they still enjoy things, they may not remember things in the same way, but really what we find is that those emotions are what we're focusing on, and how they feel, and if that feeling is carried over. So that's one way of understanding someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, not getting hung up if they remember your name, or if they remember that you were there yesterday and say, oh, I haven't seen you, you have never come around, I was just here yesterday. But knowing that your visit, your interaction, your support, your feelings of warmth and comfort, those are things that stay with them. So for the bookcase story, the message is dementia affects factual and emotional parts of the brain. The brain stores recent and past memories. Recent memories can be lost first, while older memories may be remembered longer. Those books at the bottom shelf. Thinking skills are affected by dementia, including planning, judgment, and communication. So again, the factual part of our brain may be affected more, but the emotional parts are more intact and stay there longer. So just that simple understanding helps us interact better and support our family members and our community members who may have Alzheimer's or dementia. So everyday tasks. So one way of understanding the difficulty someone has when they have Alzheimer's or dementia is breaking down a simple task like making a cup of coffee. Something that we may do automatically, whether you're using a Keurig or stovetop or a coffee maker. Say you're using a coffee maker, you put the filter in there, you put the coffee, and you put some water and set it to brew. you know, sounds very simple. But if you actually, and what we would do in a group is write out all the steps, maybe on a whiteboard. There's actually a lot of steps there. First of all, you have to find the kitchen. You have to find the coffee. It's in the refrigerator or the cabinet. You have to find the filter and separate it. Know where to put it in the coffee maker. Know that you have to fill it with water, and know all the power functions. So things that seem very simple, you could also use an example of brushing your teeth. Someone who gets in the early middle or later middle stages of dementia starts to have trouble with these simple tasks because there are many more steps involved than we think. So one woman says taking care of her husband, she does have to help him and make sure that he gets the correct tube for toothpaste, setting out the toothbrush, things like that. So there are many more steps. And so if you had to explain a task like this to someone, could they remember all the steps? And so that's one of the activities to really kind of work out and see, you know, how difficult it can be to navigate that. So communication. And there are a lot of tips on how to communicate better with somebody with dementia. And as Nathan mentioned, these are things that we could use with businesses, restaurant staff, staff at stores, to understand how to communicate with somebody who may be experiencing memory loss. So the changes that may happen are using familiar words repeatedly, inventing new words to describe familiar objects, easily losing train of thought, reverting to a first language. So if their first language was not English, we find that many times people will start using that language more often, and having difficulty organizing words logically. So tips are, and again, Nathan mentioned this, treat the person with dignity and respect. We always say, don't talk about them as if they're not there. Always include them in the conversation. Always ask them, you know, permission, or ask them, you know, is it okay if we do this? Be aware of your feelings. If you are frustrated or irritated, try not to transfer that in your discussion or interaction with them. Be patient and supportive. One of the goals always is to offer comfort and reassurance. So avoid criticizing or correcting them. There's no reasoning or arguing with them. That's one of the golden rules. If you can't tell what they want, offer a guess, and encourage nonverbal communication. So if you're feeling like verbal communication is not getting through, try touch, offer an example. Say you want to brush your teeth, maybe brush your teeth alongside them to show what you want them to do. When approaching the person with dementia, approach from the front, not from the side or from behind. Try to identify yourself. Really come, if they're seated, come to their eye level, and use the preferred name that they are using. Use short, simple phrases. Speak slowly and clearly, and use a gentle and relaxed tone. And patiently wait for a response. There's another little exercise where we do, sometimes it takes 30 to 60 seconds for somebody to respond. And that may seem like an eternity when you're waiting for a response. But what we encourage is for folks to really just wait, and things are going to take longer, and you'll have to be patient and see if you can get a response. And during the conversation, provide statements rather than questions. You know, say how nice it is to see them, not ask them, you know, how you're happy to see me. Avoid confusing and vague statements. Turn negatives into positives. Give visual clues as to your greetings. Avoid quizzing them, of course. Don't go and say, oh, do you remember my name? Or do you remember this? Or do you remember that? You know, we definitely want to avoid that. You might try use written notes or pictures to help with the conversation. So these are the 5 key messages that we went over earlier, and it's a big part of this program. I won't read them again. We're running short. We want to make sure there's time for questions and answers. And we also want to turn your understanding into action. What does dementia friendly mean to you? A dementia friend supports the 5 key messages and commits to their own dementia friendly action. Think what you can do in your community to be more dementia friendly. You could find ways to provide these presentations to businesses in your community. I was thinking of other things like libraries. That was great that Nathan mentioned, having an area where there are resources and information about Alzheimer's or dementia. There are many ways you can, you know, provide information Maybe the city website could have information about resources about dementia and caregiving. All these ways, there's lots of resources on our website. You can call our helpline. I'll give you our website. We have social workers that do care management. And again, it's free one-on-one help. We do classes and caregiver workshops. We have support groups, which are great, really great ways to connect with others and reduce stress among caregivers. And then we have volunteer and fundraising opportunities to raise awareness. You can contact me, and of course we'll share our resources. I can share these slides with you as well. And then you can visit our website at alzheimersla.org. We have social media as well, our helpline number. And then there's just lots of things out there available that lots of times people just are not aware of, that they can get assistance and help in supporting somebody, a family member with Alzheimer's or dementia. So I'll end there and turn it back over to our
Thank you very much. Thank you for presenting this valuable information to us this afternoon. We are going to open it up to question and answer for the next 20 minutes or so. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the question and answer portion, or the question and answer button, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And I'm not sure if the senator would like to, or has any closing remarks, anything he'd like to add.
No, I just want to say thank you to the panelists and thank you for everybody. It was a lot of information, a lot of important information, a lot of good information to digest. So with that, let's just go to the chat and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, I saw one question from Brianna. With COVID, my grandma being in assisted living with dementia, they don't let us be near her. Our visit is the same question about why over and over. What do I do? And what do I say when she asks when she's going to get out of there? So that's a common situation. And the advice we give is really, you know, we're not trying to reason with them or tell them, you know, we don't know. It's really comforting them and trying to find ways, trying to find phrases and ways to comfort her. What are things that help her feel comforted? It's like, we're going to come see you as often as possible. We're here for you. Find things that help her feel more calm. What are things that sometimes it's a distraction? Does she like pictures of kittens, or does she like seeing pictures of other family members that you could hold up on your phone, or photo albums would bring, to try to get her into a comfortable place? I know repetitive questions are very common with Alzheimer's dementia, so this is not unusual. And so there are many strategies to try to, you know, change the subject or get to some other place where she's not as anxious or agitated. So again, you know, I'm the community education person. Our social workers and care planners at our office would offer more specifics. We also have tip sheets on our website that you can look at. There's lots of resources to look up, and everybody's different, you know, so some things may work with one person and not with another. So we offer a whole menu of things that you can try to see what may comfort your grandmother.
Looks like we have a number of questions that have come in through the chat. I see one, that a couple that came in the Q&A section that are separate from the chat. I don't know if I'm guessing you can see that as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can. So if it would be helpful if you could answer this question for us. Is there any help for dementia patients that are basically non-mobile and need help with feeding and changing diapers? Can anyone answer that question for Nicolene?
Do you want to answer that, Nathan, or?
Yeah, I'm sorry, where was that one? So
it's from Nicolene, and her question is there help for dementia patients that are basically non-mobile and need help with feeding and changing diapers?
Yeah, so you're talking about caregiving. So, you know, there are paid caregivers, but if that is something that's not in your budget, there are some other resources there. I discovered that there are some grants out there. One of them is USC actually has a caregiving grant. If you qualify for it, They pay for like 120 hours of caregiving. There are some other organizations that have some similar opportunities. Getting assistance with that can be quite challenging. But if you live in LA County, you can get in-home assistance through the county. You can apply for that and see if they can assign a caregiver to your home. They'll give you about 20 hours. I believe it's 20 hours a week or something along those lines. So you can do that. The other thing is, if it's challenging for you personally to do that, maybe you haven't had the training or education on how to do it, or I found in my my caregiving that sometimes it's challenging for family members to want to do that personally. So sometimes it's just a matter of getting some additional training and knowledge and learning how to feel a little more comfortable with that. Some of it has to do with having the right PPE, which we've all heard a lot about recently, having the right materials, the right diapers, the right wipes, the right gloves, things like that, just to make it a little more easy. And there are simple techniques that can be used to make the whole process of cleaning up after somebody who's gone to the restroom.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. Our next question is from Susan, and she asks, I'm taking care of a woman with dementia. She has a caregiver and is home, but I fear that at some point she'll need to move to assisted living. How do I know when that is? And how can I find her something that won't empty her out financially?
Well, I'm happy to answer that. So, there are people who run companies that do what's called placement, and none of them charge, or at least the reputable ones do not charge. And the reason they don't charge is because the places where people get placed, the residences where they end up living out their life, are the ones who pay these organizations. But their job really is to go and visit them all, know the staffs at them all, understand what the criteria is to move in and stuff like that. And oftentimes, this is addressing your budgeting question, is their job is to help you find something that is in line with your budget. So, the earlier on you start doing this research, the better, because it might take some time for you to line up the right finances and things like that. You might have to make some changes, depending on the type of place where the individual is going to live. If it's a large facility with a lot of resources, sometimes it can be a little more pricey. If it's a group home type setting, it might be a little less. And then, of course, depending on what we're talking about here as far as finances, if your finances are very, very limited, you might be able to get some support from the county or the state. As far as knowing the right time, that really comes down to having that conversation with your medical professionals, understanding what's really going on with the individual you're caring for. What are their needs? What can they still do for themselves? If it's round the clock care, like 24/7, and you're the only person at home that's there to provide that care, who's taking care of them when you're sleeping? Because you have to sleep at some point. So those are some of the questions that will help you make that decision.
Thanks, Nathan. I'm not sure if Kamiko, if you'd like to add anything. If not, I was going to jump to questions about support groups, but I don't want to leave you out, Ms. Kelly. Well, if there's anything you'd like to add.
No, that's fine. We can jump to the next question.
Okay, and there have been some there, and I'm going to kind of wrap all of these into one big question, but there have been some questions about support groups, and specifically one for FTD, which is frontal temporal dementia, I believe is what I saw. But they're looking for more specified groups, more specific groups. But in general, people are asking about support groups and where might one find information on those?
Yeah, I can answer that. I did put in the chat our website, and at our website, we do have a link to support groups, and we have a whole list of support groups almost every day of the week that are offered on different topics, different subgroups, and again, all offered virtually. So you can go to our website. We offer support groups in Spanish as well. We have some partners who do them in Korean and Chinese, and Japanese as well. So there's a whole list there. And then for frontal temporal, UCLA, we work with UCLA Mary Easton Center, Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and they do offer a whole list of support groups as well. And they do have one on frontal temporal. So you can find many out there. They're all kind of different depending on the facilitators in the group. So I definitely recommend trying. If one doesn't suit you, try others and finding one that works for you, because it's really great to talk to others going through the same thing.
And I have studied social work, and I'm a social worker, and I completely get the understand, not only firsthand because I've attended support groups, but just the having someone there to hear you, and to know that you're not alone in going through something, but while also at the same time providing you with tangible resources to help get you through what you're going through, no matter what that subject matter is completely important. As a social worker, I completely value the work that you guys do. So thank you. I'm going to move on. We have 3 more questions that are in the question and answer section, and they're 3 specific different kind of questions, but one has to do with the accusation of stealing, and how should one handle that type of situation? Or if that person is also becoming combative, are there any just general tools that one can use, or is there a website or resource where they could kind of go through the tools that they might be able to use in those 2 cases?
Would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, why don't I go ahead?
Okay.
Definitely all of those things. I saw several things. There's questions about hoarding, accusations of stealing, also angry, getting combative. All of these are things that we face and we hear from caregivers, all the time. So it's something that we definitely have resources for on our website, which I shared in the chat, or I can share also again with everybody. There are caregiver tip sheets that offer again kind of a menu of things to try with different people. One of the main things, the main message though we kind of went over is really kind of not arguing with them about it. If they're accusing you of stealing or accusing somebody, really just trying to go along, because you're not going to be able to reason with them. The same with getting angry or combative, or even hoarding. If there are ways that you can address the issue calmly and again, pivot them from what they're doing with something else that they like, some other activity. So accusations of stealing, really we recommend just going along saying, really relating to them emotionally. Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way, or you must feel very anxious about this, rather than saying, nobody stole your money, nobody came over here, there's no way. We want to avoid that reasoning. That's just not going to work. So you really want to just go along with where they're at emotionally. They're anxious. They believe somebody stole from them. So trying to figure out, let's figure out if we can find it, or let's see if we can, find some way to get them into an activity where they're not focused on that. The same with hoarding. Someone else told me, whenever we go out, my grandma always stuffs her purse full of all the napkins, and that can seem very irritating. But on the other hand, when you take a step back, you go, well, really, that's not a big deal. Let her take the napkins. Don't try to fight her. Don't try to put them back. Just let her take it. It's not, some things we feel very anxious and bothered by that maybe if we take a step back, it may not be that disruptive. So we just want to recognize what things are really harmful and what things maybe we can let go too. And again, I definitely highly recommend for these things talking to our staff of our team of social workers at the office, who really can help do individual one-on-one consultations to help talk you through what may be the options, and trying different things. And again, that's free, calling our helpline.
So I would like to add a little bit onto that. So I noticed another question Sky Yim added in the chat here, and I think it really kind of does roll right back into those first three questions about behavior. You know, the question is, resources providing strategies of how to respond. And I'm glad that you used the word respond, because that's what we want to do. We do not want to react. We want to respond, okay? And the best way to respond, first of all, is to pause, right? So we're not reacting, we're responding. Think about the scenario going on. Going back to what Kimiko just said about, not having an immediate negative response. I mean, the first thing you want to mull over is this really harmful to this individual or to somebody? Are they putting themselves in danger? Is this a situation where we need to stop them physically before it gets out of hand? If the answer is yes, then sometimes you have to act. But in most cases, we're talking about a conversation or a behavior here. And I'm gonna share with you the most important words that a caregiver can learn when you're caring for somebody with dementia. Are you ready? I'm sorry. That is the most important thing that you need to know as a caregiver. Even if you're not, or even if you didn't do anything wrong, that doesn't matter, because by putting yourself in that position and saying, I'm sorry, sometimes it just de-escalates the whole situation immediately. It deflates the balloon. It takes the power of that moment away, so that it's no longer an angry, confrontational moment. And it could become a stepping stone to just moving on to the next thing. Honestly, there are a lot of minutes in every day. And if you're a caregiver, you're taking care of your parent or your loved one or whatever, there's a lot of time you got to fill here. So, getting bogged down with that one situation is just going to stress you out and probably stress them out. And it's going to be uncomfortable for both of you. I guess the real key here is to how do I change my behavior? Because if you think that anything you're going to do or say is going to change the behavior of the individual with dementia, it's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to create sustainable behavioral change in an individual that has dementia. I'm the one who has to change. I'm the caregiver. I'm the one who can still think rationally for the most part, right? I need to try to keep myself non-stressed. I got to make sure I reach out and get as many resources as I can. And then finally, to answer, when you talk about strategies, there are a lot of great strategies out there. I know Alzheimer's Los Angeles has some groups where you can learn some really simple strategies to address some of the things that were put in the chat here. I teach a program called the Positive Approach, where we learn techniques of how to respond thoughtfully, how to ultimately create an environment where the quality of life of the individual living with dementia is much, much better than it would be without that knowledge. And I think very importantly also is my quality of life as a caregiver also improves, because I start feeling more confident about the environment I'm creating for that family member or whoever I'm caring for. And I think the days tend to go by less eventfully, I think having a low incident day is what we all want as a family caregiver, so.
Thank you, Nathan. That was a very robust answer to that question. I appreciate it. Mrs. Kelly, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything else regarding like an actual fact sheet or like reference guide maybe or an outline that folks could use, that it could be, like a quick fact sheet that they could try, say maybe we could try this, or maybe we could try this, something tangible that they're able to kind of walk away with. Do you guys
Yes.
provide anything like that?
Yes, yes, definitely. I put our website in there and it has a whole bunch of resources. We have caregiver tip sheets on all those issues: hoarding, getting angry, repetitive questions, bathing, resistance, all those things. And then we do have caregiver workshops called the Savvy Caregiver that are evidence-based to show that they reduce stress of caregivers. Just even that simple message of, no more arguing. They're always right, and even talking it through with other caregivers in the class and affirming that message really helps bring some of that stress level down. It's really us changing to adapt to the person with dementia. So either you can go to our website where there's lots of resources, caregiver tip sheets you can download, or you can call our helpline number and there's a person there ready to take your call, connect you with a care counselor, and talk through whatever problems going on and try to look for some tangible solutions.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you, Mrs.
I would
Foley.
like to share that I've used the caregiver helpline on many occasions. As a matter of fact, I've been in people's homes where, I would, on their behalf, call the helpline and put it on speaker, and we would find resources together. So it's a 24-hour helpline. There's always somebody willing to help and connect you to resources, and the people who answer the phones are trained to know how to connect you and how to provide that information. And I've always found it very, very helpful. And one of the things that I discovered as I got to know Alzheimer's Los Angeles more and more is, as I was working with them to develop dementia-friendly Monrovia, is that the list of resources that they have their fingertips on, whether their organization is directly providing it or whether they're just connecting you to an outside group or something like that, it's pretty limitless. I mean, whatever you might need that will help you as a caregiver for somebody with dementia, there's something out there for you, whether it's a specific support group or whether it's a type of training or whether it's videos. There are tons of videos they have out now that are so informative, and they're all free, and everything that they offer is free. So I would say, like their Facebook page, go to their website, check out what's out there, and use that information because it's only going to enrich your life.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to say thank you to Kimiko and Nathan and Christy and my staff and everybody and all of our partners who really highlighted this important but often not discussed issue. There's lots of information, lots of websites and emails. Please, everybody who's been listening, don't be a stranger. Reach out to us for help and check out the organizations, our sponsors that we mentioned in the beginning. I'm going to mention them one more time just to make sure everybody hears the great people that were part of this. We had Monrovia Providers Group, Dementia Friendly Monrovia, and we have, I got one more page. We have Alzheimer's Los Angeles with my office co-sponsored this event. It's up on my Facebook page if you want to rewatch it. We're also going to put it on my website so you can share it with your friends and family. And thank you, everybody, for spending 2 hours on this topic of dementia. Now, that's a lot of time, but a lot of information. So thank you, everybody, for being part of it.
Thank you so much.
for hosting.
Be safe for the holidays, everybody. Social distance, wear your mask, be smart and be safe.
Yes.
God bless.
Safe.
Thank you, everybody.